Okay, folks, I believe we have Bill Meridian on the line, Cycles Research in Vienna, Austria. Bill, how are you today?
Hello from just outside of Princeton, New Jersey.
Ah, that's right. You've been a resident of the Big Apple for quite a while. Well, around that area for quite a while now, haven't you?
Yes.
Oh boy. What do you have any plans of going back sometime in soon? Are things how are they going over there in Austria, Bill, as far as the virus and stuff?
Well, in a country of 8 million people, they only had 650 deaths. And
Wow.
they started opening up again, and then they closed down again. But they didn't close down fully. They have not closed down
Hmm.
opera and things like that, but they've got all of these rules. And most recently, if you go to the cafe, you have to give them all your contact information. So if somebody who patronizes the cafe comes down with it, they're going to call you.
Can Americans travel freely into Vienna?
If you have I don't know if they can. I'm an Austrian citizen. I have to have a valid negative COVID test in hand. But the problem, Larry, has been that nobody can get it done in time for me to catch the flight
Oh boy, wow.
because it can't be older than 72 hours, and the travel time is about 20. So I had
Mm-hmm.
one test, and they said they were going to rush it, and they didn't do it. They didn't get it done. So I'm about to try a Princeton Medical Center and maybe return right after the election or in the last week of this month.
Okay. Use my name
But
there, Bill. It might help you get the test done
okay, I'll
quicker,
do that.
okay? Hey,
But
listen,
people are telling
about
me, I have
6 months, about six.
Austrians and Americans stuck here saying there's no reason to go back there. It's more comfortable being here than over there at the moment.
Oh, wow. About 6 months ago, you told us this thing was going to get really crazy around election time, and
Oh
I
yes.
think that was even before the COVID. What are you looking at now, Bill? We're looking at. You want to run through what you're looking at today, so the folks can get an idea, and then we have a few questions already ready to go. So please,
What
if
page
you'll
are you
go
on,
ahead
by
and
the way?
start.
Oh, where are you? What page? I sent you a
I'm on
PowerPoint.
page two. I have
What two is
page two
just
up there.
the announcements. Oh, I'm
Let's get
at
that.
Forbes.com and Great Speculations, the foundation of the study of cycles. I'm on the board. It's come back to life. And my astrology columns have moved from Dell Horoscope to the Mountain Astrologer. So those are the three announcements.
Hmm.
And the 2020 updated forecast. S&P to move higher. That's quite an interesting situation, which we'll go through. Bonds likely to rally. Bonds have been very troublesome, but I think I finally got the cycles right here. And gold is to correct in this month before moving higher, which means I think it's rallying this week and then getting clobbered next month, and then it starts rallying again in the following week, the last week of the month, and then rallies in November. And here we go with Larry's favorite here, signs of excess. The Hakut
Okay,
Sai
let's get.
Great Wave print was auctioned last week by Christie's in New York. It's 10 by 15 inches. An estimated 5,000, 8,000 copies were printed. Estimate was $150,000 to $250,000, and it sold for $1.1 million,
Gee.
which makes it the most valuable artwork ever. 5,000 times 1 million equals 5 billion. And there's a picture. And again, for those who haven't heard me
Wow.
before, this is a sign that the central bank of the U.S., known as the Federal Reserve, has simply printed way too much money. And I know this next one, Larry, you were considering getting this for your living room. It
Grandson,
was
yes.
it was it it went for when I spoke last, the estimate was $6 to $8 million. It went for 38 million for the dinosaur
Oh,
skeleton.
oh
Again,
my
it's a
God.
sign that there is simply too much liquidity around and enough money, as my old friend Ian Notley used to say, for any Tom, Dick, or Harry to buy anything. And when everything goes up together, everything comes down together. So at the moment, you're in the up phase. And here we have a Tiger Woods golf club win for $155,000, a new record for a putter. And last here we
For a
have,
putter,
for a putter, $155,000.
I
And
wouldn't have paid more than 100 and a quarter for it myself, but what do I know?
okay, this Fiat 500 Jolly with wicker seats is a 70 to 100,000 pound estimate. So if you want to get your bids in, it hasn't sold yet. I had never heard of one of these.
Hmm.
1963 Fiat beach car. So that's what's happening. And, during these booms, where do you think the money is coming from? So anyway, let's go down now to October. Now, this is what I did for September. You remember I said September, the odds, according to this methodology, the odds of September being up were 1 in 6, if you remember when I was on a month ago.
Yes.
Now I've reversed it. So October, all months, 56% are up. This is from 1885. October, in years ending in a 0, 69.2% have been up. October in election years, 54.5% up. October in both 0 and election years, which I believe has only been, I think it's 8. It's 6 out of 7 or 7 out of 8, 83.3% up. Now let me just say, years ending in 0 are usually down for the year. But by this time of the year ending in a 0, the market is usually down substantially. So it usually bottoms in October. That's why that 69.2 is so high. So this is what I call a static presentation for those of you out there who want to study cycles. Let's go down to the next slide. This is dynamic. If the S&P is up from October 1 to 12, and we're now on 13, you can see from 1885, you can see that 4 weeks later, 46 times up, 23 down. That's 67% up. 1 week later, 42 and 27. 2 weeks later, 40 and 29. 3 weeks later, 41 and 28. And I mentioned 4 weeks later. Look at 5 weeks later. In other words, you're up about 65, 70% of the time if the S&P is up from October 1 to 12, where it's usually weak. So in other words, there's something stronger overriding the natural calendar day cycle, which is, of course, the calendar is generated by the relative position of the Earth and the Sun, so you could call it a solar cycle or an Earth cycle. So this is looking very good right here, and I'm very long. As you remember, I said, I think I said that the low would be in late September. I forget exactly what I said, but now let's just go down. How do you confirm this? Let's go down one more slide. And, I should have made this a little bigger. But I'm looking at the retracement. First of all, the blue retracement area. This market only corrected 23.6%. I thought it would be 38.2. So I got the magnitude wrong. But you see a little AB at a very short C. And then it bottomed and took off and, in fact, gapped up. Well, the gap up is telling you a lot. And you see that little 38.2%. Now I'm looking at the red lines, up in the upper right-hand corner. The 38.2% in blue, that's denoted by that red dashed line, horizontal line. The minute it goes above 38.2%, as my old friend Tony Plumber in London would remind us, that pretty much tells you the odds are pretty high that the market's going higher. If it's an ongoing correction, it would hit 38.2% and turn down. And as you can see, it's been very strong. So there's a static cycle projection, a dynamic one, and then a confirmation from the market analysis.
Wow. We're going to pay a few bills, and we'll be right back with Bill
Pay the bills.
Meridian of Cycles Research. We're going to pay the bills. Thanks, Bill. We'll be right back, folks. 87. Okay, we're back, folks. We're on slide 12 with Bill Meridian, Cycles Research. Bill, would you mind continuing, please?
Sure. We're now on 12. Well, this is, again, if you haven't seen the presentation before, that is the cycles projection done by my software. That takes all of the most recent cycles, combines them together, it tests them individually and in combination, telling you which ones are the most profitable. And the mistake that most cycles researchers make is they use R-square or they use some statistical measure. And, we're not trying to win the Nobel Prize in quantitative analysis. We're trying to make money. And if you look to the lower left, you'll see that little cycle peak, the dashed line. You note the solid line. That was not too far off. It topped a little bit before the cycle top, and it bottomed a little bit after the cycle bottom. And you'll notice it's climbing that wall now. And now we'll have a little dip here. But I think that'll be in early November around the election. I think that little dip you see that's in the future is uncertainty associated with the election. Then you get another rally up, and then kind of Novembers, by the way, are not all that. Novembers are kind of flat. that type of analysis you saw me do, where I went through all Octobers, in election years. November's kind of flat, and December is not as strong as it usually is, but that cycle you're looking at does not peak until January. So we could imply from that, you would think that if Biden wins the election, and I have no idea how or why the Democrats are running their campaign so poorly, that the market would sell off. Well, the market does not sell off here, and which would imply that Trump's going to win. And just talking to people around here, in certain areas, you see all these Biden signs and you see no Trump signs, but instead you see American flags, because people are apparently afraid to put out Trump signs. They don't want their property vandalized. I've heard a lot of this in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So that is what the cycle looks like. And just again, for those interested in cycles, every time I turn the computer on, it of course takes in the new numbers. When I turn it on, when I fire this program up, it will incorporate the data from yesterday, and it generates numbers to show me how well the cycle is fitting. And that cycle is fitting well. Let's go down to the weekly cycle, and you see the weekly cycle also shoots up. So that should extend this rally into sometime into November 10th. Or then you'll notice that decline. Now, the weekly cycle, the declines in the weekly cycle, here's why, have only been right 1 out of 8 times. That's 12.5%, which is not at all reliable. 50% is low. But that's what happens in a strong uptrend. The monthly cycle is dominating. And the weekly cycle, you can rely, well, you look, it's a pretty good fit. Look to the upper left. You see that peak, and you see the cycle came down, and then it overshot. And now it's pointing up, the market. So everything's okay for now. I think I'm up until about election time. And of course, again, for those who are interested in cycles, we'll go down. This is the most basic, the 1, the 4, and the 10-year cycle. The 1-year cycle, of course, being the election year cycle, which is supposedly due to the Federal Reserve juicing up the money supply. But the problem with that is the 4-year cycle existed before the establishment of the Federal Reserve in 1913 and exists in countries in which there are 4-year election cycle, an 8-year election cycle, or no elections whatsoever. In other words, there's a 4-year cycle period. And the 10-year cycle, of course, is the decennial pattern developed by Edgar Lawrence Smith. And the 1-year cycle is just the annual cycle of the year, and you see that red line drop sharply in September, because September has been the weakest month, June the second weakest. So let's look at the summary of that. There are those cycles added together, this blue line, and what does it show? But it shows a low right around October 10th. And so that's it. I mean, if there are other cycles out there, which undoubtedly I think there are, then I don't know where they are or how we find them, but the one I rely on the most, it takes in all of the current cycles that are profitable and adds them together. So that's the number one, and then I try and confirm it with the other cycles, and then it's up to the market, which, Larry, I'm sure you understand, the 38.2% retracement, the gap up, and as long as everything is everything, well, most things are compatible. All the lights aren't always green. The stock market is out there to make you look silly if you're trying to predict, and to take away all your money if you're trading. So let's apply this to a stock. This is a Procter & Gamble. Okay. This is the PG. That is the daily cycle. Now, this is daily. That's why it's a bit of more of a sawtooth.
Just a second. I got it the wrong one, Bill. Just a minute.
Page 16?
Yeah, there we go.
And you'll note the buy signal, which was yesterday. Mm-hmm. And you'll notice the peak up there on October 18th. In the last year, 8 of such signals have been correct. So it runs up for 1 week. It's a daily. But the weekly cycle, which I'm not showing right here, has been also in an up mode, and it's been 8 out of 9 have been accurate. So you got daily and weekly pointing up. How about the month of October? Well, the month of October has been the single strongest month to hold PG, up 68.3% of all such months over the last 41 years. So I think the target is 150 by month's end. Now, the only thing that's out of sync here is the monthly cycle, which I think is flat. That's the only thing that is not pointing up. And it makes a bit of sense. I've said to people, I managed a big technology portfolio in Abu Dhabi, and I had to go through this in 2000. I said, well, look, money's going to cycle out of the big tech stocks and go somewhere else. And this is somewhere else. It's Procter & Gamble, big, well-known company. The other one I bought the week before is Triple M, which I'm still holding. And let's go down one more slide. Here are the technicals. And you'll note that little August to September, that little flat period, and now it's risen up out. And I think this chart's a day old. Then you see the momentum. The blue line is curling up. And you notice the most important, the relative strength. P&G divided by the S&P 500, you'll see that bottom back last June. And it's trending up. So this is enough technical confirmation for me. I should have put in the bar chart. It's really the seasonal chart for PG. It's quite remarkable. There are guys in Austria, they only have the seasonal cycle. And I told them I could work with them and incorporate all this other stuff, but they don't want to hear it. I'm double their age, but they don't want to listen to me. And so they're running into all the predictable problems that one runs into when you're only using the seasonal cycle and nothing else. Mm-hmm. So shall we apply this to gold?
Now you've hit the hot button for everybody. Just 1 second here. Let me get the gold. Bill, you're 77, aren't you, or 76?
I'm sorry?
Are you 77 or 76?
I mean age?
Yeah.
71.
71. Oh, dear. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you're just a youngster, for heaven's sakes. Okay, we got the gold seasonality chart up. You got their attention, too, my friend.
Yeah, well, you'll note the strong seasonal time of the year, June, July, August, September, and October. Now, that October, most of that weakness occurs in the second half of the month. You see how that you have that dip there in the histogram? And by the way, this histogram is constructed by expected return. So in other words, if the market is up 2% in any given month, but it's only up 50% of the time, 0.5 times 2 is 1.0. So it's expected return. And you'll notice November, December, then January, February. The weakest time of the month is really March through June. The weakest time of the year, I should say. And so next question is, what do the cycles look like? Well, let's go down. And here we have the weekly and the monthly, one on top of the other. And you'll notice they both point up.
Okay, we're back, folks. We're talking with Bill Meridian about gold. You want to continue on, Bill?
Yeah. Well, just I'll recap. The monthly cycle you can see is pointing up. The weekly cycle is bottoming, in fact, today, and shows a run up. But let's go look at this is gold performance, and that's the average month of October. All Octobers, 1969 to the present added together. And you see that slump that begins around today. So here you have a cycle conflict with the weekly and the monthly pointing up and this one pointing down. So I think you've got this week to go on the upside to sideways trading. Then I think you'll get a washout in gold until Halloween time, or November 1st or so, and then it'll start to rally again. And the people who I didn't upgrade these, but Jupiter and Neptune, the planets, have a great influence on gold prices. And here we see again, I'll explain this from that dashed green line down the middle is the exact angle of Jupiter being 60 degrees to Neptune. Now, this has happened. This was number 8. And I had this on your show, you recall, before it happened. Yes. And you can see how well that timed that correction. And now it's occurring again right now. Let's go to slide 2. And it's taking place October the 11th, which was 2 days ago. And so this points to, now you see why I'm indicating a correction in the second half of October, because this cycle is down and so is the annual cycle. And the weekly cycle will also be down temporarily. So I think we're going to get a short, sharp washout into the first week of November, and then it'll rally again. And let me just go back and say, if you're looking at the calendar cycle, which everybody does, and I made this point, they asked me to speak at MIT twice. What am I going to tell these guys? So I said, how many people here believe in an annual cycle in the stock market? It rallies in the spring, it tops, September's the worst month, there's a Christmas rally. All the hands go up. I said, well, how do you get that? And nobody answered. So I said, you get it from a calendar. How do you calculate a calendar? Relative position of the Earth and the Sun. And then everybody started to look pretty sour. And they had been waltzed from one side of the floor to the other. I said, if you're using the solar cycle, Why not the moon? Why not Mars? Why not Jupiter and Neptune? And Jupiter and Neptune, from traditional astrology, is known to have something to do with inflation, silver prices, gold prices, oil prices. Now, people who have this tend to be very optimistic, so they do exceptionally well in inflationary periods. So that's the connection and the reason I look at these things. And this, by the way, this is now, if we get this sell-off, this is going to be 9 out of 9 since 1969. And it won't occur again for about 12 or 13 years that they're spaced that far apart. So they come in a sequence, and then you don't get anything for 12 or 13 years. So let's go down one more. And, of course, last time I added in oil. And there you see the oil monthly cycle, and you'll notice that it started to decline before the peak. That's a sign of weakness if it starts to decline before the cycle peak. And then it rallied back up. You notice I drew that little horizontal bar, and actually this is gold. Oil was down around 39 something, so that chart is one day out of date. But I bet that if that cycle is down and I'm right and it's bearish, then it should not rally above that line, which it didn't. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking for oil. Now, you just get a picture of this. The oil cycle, September through April, is down monthly. That's a long stretch. Let's look at the oil seasonality. And where are we? We're in the month of October. And we don't really get any seasonal strength until March. So there's not much holding oil up. I am short it, and I think it'll go to $31, $32, and I got that just by normal retracement levels. Mm-hmm. So I'm still short oil. And bonds, now this is the annual cycle for bonds, and you'll note July and August are strong months, but I believe it declined in August, which is very unusual. The bonds have been very acyclical. I think the interest rates are being manipulated by all this money dumped into the system, that the capacity to inflate the currency has increased over the years. So it is no wonder that old seasonal cycles would stop working or be altered somehow. But you see, October is an okay month. November is an okay month. And let's look at the bond monthly cycle. Now, I just reran this. This is one cycle. The S&P monthly cycle, I have not had to reoptimize that for 2 years. The bond cycle just stopped fitting. It started generating. You turn it on, you get the bond cycle up, and it shows negative. It shows you're losing money following this cycle. That's the time to reoptimize it. And you'll note that it came down with the cycle, and it shows a bottom here. I am currently, I have a small long position. I've closed out my short positions profitably. And it points up basically November, the middle of November up until the middle of February. So that is, I don't think you're going to see much movement, but I don't think you should be short bonds. That's the message I'm getting, but I don't see that much. I don't see much magnitude here, up or down.
Yeah, that was my trade for today. They certainly they held that bottom there at 173 for 4 days, and it's just started to move up. And boy, it's certainly oversold. That's for sure. Bill, I have a question before you go on to the next slide. Your friends over in Abu Dhabi, you did a lot of trading for them. Did they get into the art world? I mean, buying the expensive art, like Da Vinci and all that other stuff these dudes are doing over there?
Generally, no. If you go into any Arab household, it is a lot of space, a lot of bare walls, and local art, art of the Middle East. But you do have one guy up in Dubai, I can't remember his name, but they called him the Rainbow Sheikh because he dressed so colorfully. But people like that in Dubai and Saudi Arabia, they do buy art, yes. But
okay.
On average, no.
Well, I have a couple of lovely Elvis paintings that I got down in Nogales on crushed velour that is just absolutely spectacular. I hope to show it to him someday because as you walk across the room, his eyes actually follow you. I mean, it's just amazing. Bill, tell us about your Cycles Research Warning Service and, what you offer to the folks, okay?
Well, that's that I offer to the public. It's a monthly service, $300 a year, and it comes out before the first trading day of every new month, and it includes interim updates in case I'm wrong and I need to change something. I do that. And that's it. I have institutional services. They offer the institutions to cover many more markets. And, you've got a lot of some people, they closed down a lot of proprietary trading with the financial crisis. I think the way their response to the financial crisis is let's close down all the get rid of all the CTAs and let's get rid of all the internal traders. They're starting to come back now, and they're being very successful. And my one client had $1 billion under management 3 years ago. He's now got 8. He's up 23% this year. He's the only guy I know who's ahead of me. I'm up 17%. And they do a lot of this, have a great deal of faith in it. And so I advise a lot of those people. And, of course, I still do horoscopes for people because when you love something, you love it, and you keep doing it. And that I have all sorts of interesting stories to tell about that. I have one client moving from Hong Kong to Switzerland and wants me to relocate his chart and tell him what Switzerland will be like for him. And by the way, about being 71, I went in the local place here, Teddy's, which is in Cranberry, New Jersey, which is a lovely colonial town. And I said, they finally got to know me, and they started talking to me. And I said, how old are you? I said, I'm 71. And nobody could believe it. And I said, yeah, well, I've been practicing a long time to stay this young, so.
Hey, Bill, stay with us. I have one other human interest story between you and I about your horoscope stuff. 877-927-6648. Bill Meridian, Cycles Research. We'll be right back.
.com.
Okay, folks, we have Bill Meridian on the line. Bill, I don't know if you remember this or not, but I met you in 1983 when I was friends with Victoria Martin, when I was trading on the floor of the exchange with Byron Tucker, the old group. You remember us? Yep. Anyway, I wanted you to do my chart, and you said, well, what was your birth time? And I didn't have my birth time because the hospital in Terre Haute, or in Vigo County in Clinton, where I lived, Vermilion County, where I was born, had burned down. And you said, well, what information could you give me, and I'll rectify the chart. And you and Victoria separately did the charts, and they came out with 11:55 p.m. And my aunt said, I don't know when you were born, but it was right around midnight. So you were spot on. And you told me that, and this is long before I'd ever written a book. I mean, 5 years before I ever wrote a book. You said I was going to write a lot of books. I was going to be on TV, and I would be traveling the world. And I remember laughing about it because I said, that's so far off to what's going to happen. And Bill, you were absolutely right. So I know astrology works. It's way over my pay grade, but boy, it certainly blows me away at times. That's for sure. Hey, Bill, we have a question here.
Yes.
Someone's asked, what do you charge for a horoscope?
$300.
Oh,
that's a 1 year forecast, but I have to analyze your chart natally, so I don't charge you for that. I send you about an hour and a half explanation of your natal chart, and then I do the forecast. I've got to do a thorough examination of the natal chart first before I do anything, before I can make any forecast.
Wow, it was $250 35 years ago. So you haven't gone up much in price. That's pretty good. Anyway, hey, listen, we're going to tell us about the election. What's your best guess?
I really haven't done much work on it. I just know the horoscopes for Election Day, the day the Electoral College makes the count, and for Inauguration Day are all very afflicted charts. And so my guess is I feel that Trump is, if it's a fair election, he wins. But, of course, they're going to try and, right here in New Jersey, they've been caught stuffing ballot boxes. They arrested a postman the other day for dumping mail, including ballots. And they've been finding Trump votes in trash cans all through New Jersey. This is going on, and yet people don't believe this voter fraud.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to win, but I think that's going to be followed by a lot of chicanery, violence, and things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, thanks for joining us, my friend. We'll be back with Bill Meridian someday in the future. May God bless, folks.